You clicked because turning your body has started to cost you something. A twinge when you reach for the seatbelt. A catch in your lower back when you turn to see who called your name. That little grunt you make now, getting up out of a chair. I lived with that for years. I thought it was just age. It is not age, it is your stance. I found something buried in the way ordinary Japanese people stand and turn, and once I adjusted one thing, rotation came easy again. No stretching program, no gym. Just a correction that has been passed down quietly in Japan for centuries. Here is what I promise you. By the end of this, you will understand a movement pattern recorded in Edo-period travel writing from the 1700s, revived by a Japanese martial researcher named Kono Yoshinori, and confirmed by gait studies out of Japanese universities. And you will be able to test it standing in your own kitchen tonight, in whatever shoes you already own. I still remember the exact moment it clicked for me. I was in a small vegetable garden outside Kanazawa, watching a woman I was told was 87 bend, twist, and reach across her rows without a single hitch in her body, while I stood there at 59, afraid to turn too fast. That gap between us is what I could not stop thinking about, and I finally know why it existed. So let me walk you through exactly what I found, one piece at a time. The first thing that did not add up was that woman in the garden. I watched her for the better part of an hour, because honestly, I could not believe it. She would squat down low, pull a weed, twist her whole torso to drop it in a basket behind her, and come back up. Over and over. No hands pushing on her knees. No bracing against a post. She moved like the turning cost her nothing. Now, I had been told my whole life that this kind of thing fades with age. That stiffness is just the toll of the years. My own doctor back home had shrugged and told me to expect less range of motion every decade. So I expected it. I planned my whole body around avoiding the turn. But here was a woman almost 30 years older than me, turning freely. So I did what anyone would do. I assumed she was special. A rare case. Good genes, I told myself. Then I looked up from her, and I saw her neighbor. Another older woman doing the same. And down the lane, an old man carrying 2 buckets, pivoting to set one down without twisting his spine at all. It was not one person, it was how they all moved. That is when the question changed in my head. I stopped asking, why can she still do that? I started asking, what does she know that I do not? And the first clue was in her feet. I noticed that when she turned, she did not plant her feet and wrench her upper body around against them. That is what I had done my whole life. I kept my feet still, like they were bolted to the floor, and I twisted everything above the waist to face a new direction. Every turn was a fight between my hips and my shoulders, and my lower back was the battlefield in the middle. She did the opposite. Her feet were alive. When she wanted to face a new way, her stance shifted first, and her body simply followed. There was no twist because there was nothing to twist against. I want you to feel this right now, wherever you are sitting. Keep your feet flat and frozen, and turn to look behind you. Feel where that pulls. Now stand up, let one foot step and pivot, and turn the same way. Feel the difference. One of those turns wears your spine down a little every single day. The other one does not. That one observation resolved something for me. Rotation is not supposed to happen in your spine. It is supposed to happen in your stance. But that only opened a bigger question. Because if turning from the feet is so natural, so obviously kinder to the body, then why on earth had I spent almost 60 years doing it the hard way? Nobody taught me the wrong method on purpose. Or did they? That is the thread I pulled next, and it is where this stops being a charming story about a garden and starts being about something that was taken from you. So let me tell you what changed our stance in the first place, because someone benefited from it. Here is the uncomfortable part. The way that woman in Kanazawa stood and turned was, for most of human history, the way everybody stood and turned. It was not Japanese magic. It was normal. It was how your own great-grandparents most likely moved. Then, Within just a few generations, we sat down, and we never really got back up. Think about how many hours you now spend in a chair. Most adults in the Western world sit somewhere between 9 and 13 hours a day when you add it all up. The car seat, the office chair, the couch, the recliner in front of the very screen you are watching me on right now. We were sold comfort, one padded surface at a time. And here is what a chair does to your stance that nobody warns you about. When you sit for years, the muscles deep in your hips that are supposed to turn your body go quiet. They forget their job. The hip that should rotate freely gets stiff and shortened. So when you finally do need to turn, your hips cannot do it, and your body, being clever, borrows the movement from the one place left that will bend, your lower spine. Your spine was never built to be your main turning joint. It is built to be stable, to protect the cord of nerves running down the middle of you. Ask it to twist a few thousand times a day for years, and it wears. That grinding you feel is not the years, it is the wrong joint doing another joint's work. Now here is where I got angry, and I think you will too. The Japanese people I watched had not escaped chairs entirely, but the tradition they grew up inside kept them close to the floor, sitting on tatami mats, kneeling to eat, squatting to work in the garden and to wash, getting down and getting back up, dozens of times a day, using the exact hip movement that a chair robs from the rest of us. Every time that 87-year-old lowered herself to the floor and rose again, she was doing what a physical therapist would charge you good money to relearn. She had been doing it, free, every day, her whole life. Her stance never got the chance to die. We were handed the opposite. A lifestyle that keeps us upright in chairs, praised as progress, sold as comfort, that quietly switches off the very muscles that let a body turn without pain. And when those muscles fail and the back starts to ache, there is a whole line of people ready to sell you the cushion, the brace, the pill, the surgery. Not one of them ever tells you the problem started with your stance. I am not asking you to throw out your furniture. I still own a couch, but I want you to see the trade that was made on your behalf, without your consent. Comfort now, mobility later, and nobody read you the terms. So I had my villain. Decades of sitting, dressed up as the good life, shutting down the hips. But knowing what broke it does not tell you how to fix it, and that is where I had to go back further, past the chairs, past even the tatami mats, into the roads of old Japan. Because it turns out the Japanese did not just preserve this stance by accident. At one point, they trained it on purpose, for one of the most demanding jobs a body has ever done. Let me take you onto those roads. In the Edo-period, which ran from 1603 to 1868, Japan had a network of great highways connecting the country. The most famous was the Tokaido, the road between the old capital Kyoto and the shogun's city of Edo, which we now call Tokyo. That road ran roughly 320 miles. There were no cars, there were no bicycles. Ordinary people who could not afford a horse walked the whole thing. And not slowly. Records from that era describe messengers and porters covering distances in a day that would put a modern marathon runner to shame, carrying loads, on foot, day after day, for weeks. Now stop and think about that. If turning and moving the way most of us do today grinds down a spine in a comfortable modern life, how on earth did these people walk hundreds of miles under load without destroying their bodies? The math does not work. Unless they were moving in a completely different way than we are. They were. It has a name. In Japanese it is called Nanba. Nanba is a way of moving where the body does not fight itself. In the walk most of us learned, when your right foot goes forward, your left arm swings forward to counterbalance it, and your torso twists a little with every step. Left, right, thousands of tiny twists through the spine all day long. It feels normal because it is all we know. Nanba movement removes that twist. The body moves in one connected piece. When the weight shifts to one side, that whole side of the body travels together. There is no constant counter-rotation grinding through the middle. The power comes from shifting your stance, from the drop and the shift of your weight, not from cranking your torso around. For people who walked for a living, this was everything. No twist meant no wear. It meant you could move all day and wake up able to do it again. It was not a style, it was survival engineering, worked out over generations by people whose bodies were their only vehicle. And here is the part that made me sit up. This same principle sat at the heart of the old martial and craft traditions too. The swordsman, the carpenter, the farmer planting rice bent over for hours. They all shared one rule: turn from your center and your stance, never from your spine. The man who dragged this back into the light in our own time is a Japanese researcher named Kono Yoshinori. He spent decades studying the old martial scrolls and the movement they described, and he showed that these forgotten patterns were not superstition, they were mechanically superior. Athletes and even sprinters in Japan began studying Nanba principles because moving without wasted counter-rotation is simply more efficient. So the thread was coming together. The stance that let an old woman garden without pain was the same stance that let Edo travelers walk 300 miles. The common factor was the refusal to twist the spine. Move the stance, and the turn takes care of itself. I felt a real piece click into place right there. But I could also feel the objection rising in you, because it rose in me. This is all very nice for people who grew up sitting on floors and walking old highways. You did not. You have a job, a bad knee maybe, a house full of chairs, and about 15 minutes to yourself. So let me put the road and the garden aside now, because this next part is the part I built for your actual life. I want to show you how to bring this stance back this week. In your own home, with nothing you have to buy. Start with how you stand while you wait. You wait more than you think. At the counter while the kettle boils. In line at the store. Brushing your teeth. Right now, most of us stand with locked knees, weight jammed back into our heels, hips shut off. That is a chair standing up. It teaches your hips to stay asleep even when you are on your feet. Here is the change. Soften your knees just slightly, so they are not locked. Let your weight settle forward, toward the balls of your feet and the front of your arches, not back on your heels. Feel your feet actually gripping the floor. That small shift wakes up the muscles across your hips and lower body that a chair puts to sleep. You are not exercising. You are just standing the way a body is meant to stand. Do it every time you wait for the kettle, and you will have done it a dozen times before lunch. Now the turn itself, because this is the one that changes your daily life the fastest. The next time you need to turn around in your kitchen, I want you to stop yourself from twisting at the waist. Instead, let the foot on the side you are turning toward step or pivot first. Point that foot in the new direction, let your weight roll onto it, and let the rest of your body follow the foot. Your shoulders and your hips arrive facing the new way at the same time, together, as one piece. There is no wringing of the spine because your stance did the turning. It will feel strange for about 2 days. Then it will feel like you have always done it, because in a deep way, your body remembers. This is not a new skill. It is an old one being switched back on. Picture yourself 2 days from now, turning in your kitchen without that catch, and wishing you had every one of these corrections written down where your hands could reach them midday. That is exactly what I put together in the Japan Simple Complete system. It walks you through the body shape you set before a turn, the one pause that drains the tension out of your movement, and 3 drills you can run in your socks in your own living room, no gym and nothing to buy. The deeper volumes give you a repeatable pattern that outlasts a rough day, and the full system adds a 30-day blueprint that tells you exactly what to practice, one day at a time, so you never have to guess. And you can prove the core of it to yourself tonight, for free, right where you are standing. Soften your knees, let your weight roll toward the balls of your feet, and turn from your center instead of your waist, and feel your back stay quiet. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. Nothing here expires, so take your time and try the free version first. But there is one more correction I built for your actual life, and it is almost invisible. Here is a second one you can start today, and it directly rebuilds what the chairs took. A few times a day, lower yourself down toward the floor and stand back up, using your hips instead of hauling on furniture. If your knees are good, this is a squat down to sit on the floor and a rise back up. If your knees are not good, do a gentler version. Stand in front of a sturdy chair and practice lowering down to touch the seat with your backside and standing up again without using your hands, letting your hips fold and open. 10 of those, a few times a day, and you are drinking from the same well that kept those Japanese elders turning at 90. One more, and this one is almost invisible. When you get out of the car, do not lift your torso and twist your spine to swing your legs out. Instead, turn your whole body as one unit on the seat, pivoting from your hips, so both feet come to the door together and you rise straight up. That single change protects the most common moment people hurt their backs, and you get to practice it several times every single day. None of this requires a mat, a class, a floor you cannot use, or a body you do not already have. It requires you to notice and to correct a dozen small moments a day. That is the whole program. Notice and correct. Your stance rebuilds itself in the ordinary moments you were wasting anyway. I gave you these first because I need you to have something that works no matter what. But I held one thing back. Because everything I have shown you so far is the wide, well-worn version of this knowledge. There is a final piece, a specific detail, that I did not understand until deep into my research, and it is the piece that makes rotation not just possible but genuinely easy. This is the one I could not stop thinking about. Let me give it to you now. The finale hides in one small idea the old texts kept circling back to, an idea the Japanese call the tanden, sometimes described as your 1 point. It sits low in your belly, roughly 2 inches below your navel and a little way inside. In the old martial and health writings, this spot is treated as the true center of the body, the place all movement is supposed to begin. For a long time I dismissed this as mysticism, a vague energy idea. That was my Western skepticism talking, and it was wrong. Because when I set the spiritual language aside and looked at what the body actually does, it turned out to be plain mechanics, and it is the missing key. Here is the whole thing, and it is so simple it made me laugh out loud when it finally landed. When you decide to turn, do not lead with your eyes. Do not lead with your shoulders. Do not lead with your head craning around to see. Lead with that 1 point low in your belly. Imagine the turn starting from a spot just below your navel, and let that point rotate first. Your hips follow it, your stance shifts under it, and your shoulders, chest, and head come along last, all in one connected piece. Try it right now. Turn the old way, leading with your head and shoulders, and feel your back do the work. Now turn again, but this time imagine the movement beginning down in your lower belly, and let everything above go along for the ride. The turn comes from your center. Your spine just stays stacked and quiet. That is the difference between grinding a joint and gliding on one. The reason this works is beautiful once you see it. Your body has powerful deep muscles wrapped around that lower center, muscles built to rotate the whole trunk as a unit. When you lead a turn with your head or shoulders, you bypass those muscles and force the small joints of your spine to twist. When you lead from the 1 point, you finally hand the job to the muscles that were designed for it. Rotation stops being a strain and becomes what it was always meant to be, an easy movement powered from your center. Now let me tell you why I trust this and where I found it, because this is not something I made up in a kitchen. This idea of centered movement was written down in Japan long before anyone had a machine to measure it. It runs through the health teachings of a scholar named Kaibara Eken, who wrote a famous guide to healthy living called the Yojokun, published in 1713, when he was in his 80s and still sharp and mobile. His whole message was that vitality is kept by how you carry and move the body day to day, not by rare cures. It runs through the sword and craft traditions that Kono Yoshinori later decoded from the old scrolls. And modern gait and balance research out of Japanese universities keeps landing on the same conclusion, that initiating movement from the body's center and reducing spinal twist protects the back and preserves mobility into old age. Think about the chain of hands this passed through to reach you. Travelers on the Tokaido used it to survive the road. Farmers used it bent over the rice for hours. An old scholar wrote it down for his countrymen 300 years ago. It nearly went quiet under a century of chairs and cars and the comfort we were sold. A handful of researchers and a handful of old people in gardens kept it alive without even calling it a secret, because to them it was just how you move. And now it is in your hands, in your kitchen, tonight. That is the full pattern. Stop twisting your spine. Wake your hips by softening your stance and getting low a few times a day. Turn from your feet so your body moves as one piece, and lead every turn from the 1-point low in your belly. Do those together, and the twinge you clicked on this video to fix stops happening, because the movement that caused it is gone. I adjusted my stance around these 4 things over a matter of weeks. The catch in my back when I reached for the seatbelt faded. The grunt getting out of the chair got quieter. I turn now to see who called my name, and I do not brace for it. At 59, I move a little more like that woman in the garden, and a little less like a man waiting to be sold his next cushion. Here is what I want you to sit with. The freedom to turn your own body was not taken from you by time. It was traded away, comfort by comfort, chair by chair, and nobody ever told you the price. What you felt in your lower back was the bill, but the method that gives it back was never destroyed. It was only set down and forgotten, waiting in old roads and old books and old gardens for someone to pick it up again. You are the kind of person who feels it when something does not add up. You watched an old woman turn freely, and you would have asked the same question I asked, instead of just accepting that stiffness is your fate. That instinct, to trust your own eyes when the easy explanation smells wrong, is exactly what brought this knowledge back to life. So let me ask you one thing, and I really do want your answer. Try the turn tonight. Lead it from that 1 point below your navel, feel your body come around as one piece, and tell me in the comments whether your back stayed quiet. Tell me too which of your daily turns hurts the most right now, the car, the counter, or looking over your shoulder, because I read these and I am building the next piece around what you are actually struggling with. And if you feel what I felt, that a real thing was quietly taken from you and just handed back, then stay with me. This channel is a small group of people digging up the practical wisdom that comfort and convenience buried, and putting it back to work in ordinary homes like yours and mine. Subscribe and stand with us. Because the next thread I am pulling is about how those same Japanese elders sit down on the floor and rise again well into their 90s, using one specific way of folding the body that keeps their knees sound. I found where it was written down, and once you see it, you will never lower yourself into a chair the same way again. Here's where we go next. Inside my membership, the Quiet Wisdom Circle, I pick up right where this video stopped and walk you through the full stance correction, step by step in your own kitchen. And if something doesn't feel right, you can ask me directly. A real person answers, not a machine. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. And you can cancel anytime, no risk at all. Now that your rotation feels easy, let's fix the next thing that ruins good swings. In this next video, I'll show you the simple way Japan's golfers stop hitting behind the ball almost instantly. It's starting right here.